I woke up alone on the morning after my wedding, and the first thing I noticed was that her side of the bed was cold. Not cool. Cold. The kind of cold that means someone has been gone for hours, not minutes. The kind of cold that a body leaves behind when it has been absent long enough for the warmth to become a memory. I lay there for a moment with my hand flat on her pillow, feeling the absence of heat, and told myself there was a simple explanation. She had gone for coffee. She had stepped onto the balcony. She was in the bathroom. She was somewhere in the suite doing something ordinary on the morning after our wedding, and I was a man who had slept deeply and missed her getting up, and there was nothing wrong. I got up and checked the bathroom, the balcony, the sitting room of the suite, the minibar area with the marble counter and the untouched fruit basket that room service had delivered the evening before. I checked all of it in the specific order of someone who is moving calmly through a logical sequence and is not yet allowing himself to think the illogical thing. She was not in the suite. Her dress was gone. The white gown she had worn down the aisle at the chapel on Brickell Avenue, the one that had taken her 8 months to find and which had made her look like something from a different and more beautiful version of the world, was gone from the chair where she had draped it the night before. Her shoes were gone. The small bag she had brought to the suite with her overnight things was gone. Her phone went straight to voicemail. I sat on the edge of the bed in the Four Seasons Miami on the morning of what was supposed to be the first day of my marriage and listened to her voicemail greeting and felt the cold moving up from the sheets and into something deeper. My name is Marcus Webb. I am 34 years old and I am a maritime architect based out of Miami, which means I design the structures that interface with water, piers and marinas and coastal developments, the places where the city meets the ocean. I grew up in Coconut Grove and I have lived within 10 miles of Biscayne Bay for my entire life, and I have always understood the ocean as something you could read if you paid attention. Something whose moods were legible if you knew the language. I thought I was good at reading things. I thought I was good at paying attention. Her name was Isadora Reyes. Everyone called her ISA. She was 31 years old, a marine biologist at the University of Miami's Rosenstiel School, a Cuban-American woman who had grown up in Little Havana 3 miles from where I grew up in Coconut Grove and whom I had somehow not met until a conference on coastal sustainability 4 years ago, where she had asked me a question during my presentation that was more intelligent than anything I had said in it. She was the kind of person who had opinions about everything and delivered them without apology and without cruelty, which is a rare combination. She had dark eyes that were always a step ahead of whatever conversation was happening, and a laugh that arrived without warning and left the room feeling different after. She was the most genuinely alive person I had ever been near, the kind of person who made ordinary situations feel like they mattered, not because she performed enthusiasm but because she actually had it, for the ocean and her research and the city and the food and the music and the specific quality of Miami light in the late afternoon. We had been together for 3 years and 8 months before I proposed. I had proposed on the boat I kept at the Coconut Grove Marina at sunset, with the bay going gold and the city behind us, and she had said yes before I had finished the sentence and held on to me with both hands for a long time after. The wedding had been 120 people at a chapel on Brickell, followed by a dinner reception at a restaurant in Wynwood with string lights and the sound of the city outside and dancing that went until midnight, and which I had looked around at multiple times during the evening and thought, "This is exactly right. This is exactly what it was supposed to be." I had seen nothing, not a single thing to explain the cold side of the bed. I called her again at 7 in the morning, standing at the window of the suite looking at Biscayne Bay below, the water gray-green in the early light. Voicemail. I called her mother, Elena, whom I had known for 2 years and who had cried at the ceremony, and who answered on the third ring with the slightly confused voice of someone woken from sleep. "Marcus?" she said. "Elena," I said. "Is ISA with you?" A pause. "What do you mean?" Elena said. "She is not here," I said. "She was here last night, and she is not here now, and I cannot reach her, and I am trying not to alarm anyone, but I need to know if she has contacted you." Another pause. Longer. "She has not contacted me," Elena said. "What happened?" "I do not know," I said. "Nothing happened. We had dinner and we came upstairs and we were together, and then I woke up and she was gone." Elena was quiet for a moment, and I heard something shift in her silence. Some knowledge or near knowledge that moved beneath the surface of what she was saying. "Give me an hour," she said. I will make some calls. Elena, I said, do you know something? A long pause. Give me an hour, she said again. Then she hung up. I stood at the window and looked at the bay and thought about the pause, the specific shape of it, the pause of someone who had said less than they knew. I turned that over for a long time. I called my best friend and best man, a man named Thomas who had stood beside me at the altar 8 hours ago and had given a speech at the reception that had made half the room cry, and told him what I was telling you. He arrived at the suite 40 minutes later, still in his wedding suit trousers with a different shirt, hair uncombed, and he came in and sat at the table and looked at me with an expression that was trying very hard to stay calm. She left nothing, he said. No note. Nothing, I said. Her phone. Voicemail. He leaned his elbows on the table and pressed his hands together. Okay, he said. We are not going to panic. I am not panicking, I said. You are extremely calm, he said. Which is what you do instead of panicking, which is in some ways worse. He was right. I was the kind of person who became very still when things went wrong. Not calm, just still like a person standing in a current and bracing. Something is wrong, I said. Yes, Thomas said, which I appreciated. He did not say that she probably just needed air or that maybe it was wedding nerves or any of the comfortable explanations people offer when they cannot tolerate the discomfort of not knowing. He just said yes. Elena called back in 40 minutes, not an hour. She is safe, she said. I have spoken to her sister. ISA is safe. Something in my chest loosened fractionally. Where is she? I said. Another pause. Longer than any of the previous ones. She is with Valentina, Elena said. Valentina was ISA's younger sister, who lived in a small house in South Miami and who I had always found slightly difficult to read. Warm on the surface and careful underneath. She does not want to be contacted right now. Elena, I said. I know, she said, and the way she said it, quiet and freighted, told me that whatever was happening, it was not a small thing. I am sorry, Marcus. I am so sorry. She hung up again. I sat at the table in the Four Seasons suite with Thomas across from me and the Miami morning coming through the windows and thought about Elena's voice, the apology in it, the weight behind the apology. She left on purpose, I said. Thomas did not answer, which was its own answer. She planned it, I said. She was at the wedding. She said her vows. She danced and she laughed and she was there all evening and she planned to leave. Marcus, Thomas said. She planned it, I said again. Not angry, not yet, just trying to understand the shape of a thing that had no shape I recognized. I went back to the window and looked at the bay. The water had gone from gray-green to blue as the morning came on, the sun starting to lift above the city behind me and putting light on the water ahead. And I thought about reading things, about paying attention, about knowing the language of something well enough to understand its moods. I had understood nothing. I had read nothing correctly. The woman I had married 12 hours ago had been standing beside me all evening with a decision already made, and I had looked at her and seen only what I wanted to see, which was the most beautiful evening of my life with the person I loved most in it. I could not reconcile those two things. I stood at the window for a long time trying to reconcile them and could not do it. What do? I said. Not to Thomas specifically, just to the room. Thomas came and stood beside me at the window and looked at the bay. You give it a day, he said quietly, and then you go find out what happened, because whatever it is, you deserve to know, and she knows that, and eventually she is going to tell you. What if she does not? I said. She will, he said, because she is ISA, and whatever she is doing right now, it is not because she does not love you. I was standing next to her at the altar, Marcus. I saw her face. She loves you. Something happened and we do not know what it is yet. I looked at the bay. Something happened, I said. Something happened, he said, and the Miami morning opened around us, wide and blue and completely indifferent. And I stood in it feeling the shape of a thing I did not yet understand but was going to spend the next several months of my life trying to reach. I did not know yet that the thing I was going to find would break me open in ways I had not been broken before. I did not know that Isadora Reyes had made the most painful decision of her life the night before she left, and that she had made it because she loved me, not despite it. I did not know any of that yet. I only knew the cold side of the bed and the voicemail and the bay going blue in the morning light, and that it was the first day of my marriage, and I was alone. She did not contact me for 11 days. 11 days of sending messages that were read and not answered. 11 days of calling a number that had been my most dialed contact for 3 years and hearing the same voicemail greeting in her voice, warm and slightly amused the way she always sounded when she was not trying, saying she was unavailable and to leave a message, and hanging up because what do you leave in a message for the person who married you and disappeared? 11 days of going to work because the alternative was sitting in the apartment we had moved into together 3 months ago, the one in Coconut Grove with the view of the bay from the bedroom, surrounded by her things, her books and her research papers and the collection of small shells she kept on the windowsill above the kitchen sink, one from every field site she had worked at in 8 years of marine biology. The apartment was full of her and empty of her simultaneously, which was its own specific cruelty. Thomas came every other evening and sat with me and did not fill the silence with useless things, which was the most valuable thing another person could have done. My mother called daily. My father less frequently, but with the specific weight of a man who did not know what to say and was afraid of saying the wrong thing. Friends from the wedding sent messages of increasing awkwardness because there was no social script for what to say to a man whose wife had disappeared the morning after their wedding without explanation. Everyone wanted to help and no one knew how, and I appreciated the wanting even when I could not absorb the help. I went to work. The firm I co-founded 6 years ago, Web Marine Architecture, was in the middle of a significant project, a coastal restoration marina in Key Biscayne that was the most environmentally considered design we had ever attempted, and the work required enough of me that for 6 or 7 hours a day I was able to be primarily an architect rather than primarily a man whose wife had left without explanation. On the 8th day, I drove to South Miami. I knew where Valentina lived. I had been to her house for dinner twice. A small pale yellow house on a quiet street off Old Cutler Road with a garden that Valentina tended with the same precision she brought to everything, organized and alive. I parked on the street and sat in the car for a moment and thought about what I was doing, which was either the right thing or a violation of the space ISA had asked for, and I could not be entirely sure which, but 11 days felt like long enough to have been patient. I knocked. Valentina opened the door and looked at me with those careful, warm eyes and said nothing for a moment. "She is not here," she said. "I know," I said. "I came to talk to you." She looked at me for a long moment. Then she stepped back from the door. The house smelled like coffee and something herbed, and the afternoon light came through the garden-facing windows in long, warm strips. Valentina poured 2 coffees without asking and set them on the small kitchen table and sat across from me with the expression of someone who has been waiting for a conversation and is not sure it is the right time for it. "You deserve an explanation," she said. "I deserve one from her," I said. "But I will take what you can give me." Valentina held her coffee cup in both hands and looked at the table. "She found something out," she said. 3 days before the wedding." I went still. "What did she find out?" I said. Valentina looked at me. "You need to hear this from her," she said. "Not from me. She will not speak to me," I said. "I know," she said. "She is protecting you." "From what?" I said. A pause. "From herself," Valentina said quietly. "She thinks she is protecting you from herself." I looked at her across the kitchen table. "Valentina," I said, "please." She held my gaze for a long moment, and I could see her deciding, the calculation happening behind her eyes of what she owed her sister against what she owed the man sitting across from her, who had just had 11 days of silence on the morning after his wedding. "She went to the doctor 6 weeks ago," Valentina said. "A follow-up from an annual exam. They found something." The kitchen went very quiet. "What kind of something?" I said. "A mass," Valentina said. "Ovarian. They had to run tests to determine what it was and how serious." She paused. "The results came back 3 days before the wedding." I sat at the kitchen table and felt the floor shift beneath me in the specific way it does when information that changes everything arrives in a form too large for the brain to take in all at once. "Is it?" I said. and could not finish the sentence. Malignant, Valentina said. Stage 2. The garden outside the window was very still. A bird somewhere in Valentina's careful garden made a single sound and then was quiet. She knew 3 days before the wedding, I said. Yes, Valentina said. She went through with it, I said. She could not cancel it, Valentina said. She said she had tried to decide to cancel it and she could not. She said you would have wanted to know and you would have been there for her, and she could not stand the idea of you standing at that altar because she was sick and you felt you had to. Her voice was careful and steady, doing the work of someone delivering something fragile and trying not to drop it. She said the worst thing she could imagine was you staying with her out of obligation, out of love that had become duty. She said she would rather you hate her for leaving than watch you sacrifice your life for hers. She left to protect me, I said. She left because she loves you more than she loves herself, Valentina said. Which is wrong, and I told her it was wrong, and she did not listen. I sat very still. Where is she? I said. Valentina looked at me. She is in treatment, she said. She started 2 weeks ago. She is at the cancer center on Lejeune Road. I stood up from the table. Marcus, Valentina said. She asked me not to tell you. I know, I said. She is going to be upset, she said. I know, I said. You are going to go anyway, she said. She is my wife, I said. It was the first time I had said the word since the morning after the wedding, and it came out differently than I expected. Not as a legal fact, but as a declaration, the most important thing I knew how to say. Valentina looked at me for a long moment. Then she picked up her coffee and looked at the garden. Lejeune Road, she said. The Sylvester Comprehensive Cancer Center. She has an appointment on Thursday at 2. Thank you, I said. Do not thank me, she said. Just do not let her send you away. I drove back through South Miami in the afternoon heat with the city going on around me, people and traffic and the specific noise of Miami on a Tuesday. All of it feeling simultaneously very real and very far away. I drove to Coconut Grove and parked at the marina and got out and walked to the end of the pier and stood there with the bay in front of me and the city behind me and held everything Valentina had just told me against everything I already knew. She had found out 3 days before our wedding that she had cancer. She had stood at the altar and said her vows and danced and laughed and held my hand all evening with that knowledge inside her. She had come upstairs with me to the suite and been present and real and completely herself, and then waited until I was asleep and taken her dress and her shoes and her bag and left to face something devastating alone because she had decided that protecting me was more important than letting me protect her. I stood at the end of the pier and felt something that was not anger and not grief exactly, but something beneath both of them. Something that was the specific pain of loving someone who loves you back with a love so large it becomes its own form of disappearance. She had been wrong. She was wrong about what I needed and wrong about what love required and wrong about what staying meant. She was wrong in the specific way that people are wrong when they love too much and trust too little, when they make decisions for the people they love without letting those people be part of the deciding. She was wrong, and she was my wife. And she was sitting in a cancer center on Lejeune Road facing something enormous by herself, and I was not going to let that continue. Thursday at 2, I thought. I had 2 days. I went home to the apartment and walked into the kitchen and stood at the window above the sink and looked at her collection of shells on the windowsill. One from every field site. 8 years of ocean work, each one collected and kept and brought home. I picked up the nearest one, small and spiral, pale as bone, and held it. Thursday at 2, I thought again, and I started to plan. I was at the Sylvester Center at 1:30 on Thursday. I sat in the waiting area of the oncology wing, which was the kind of space that had been designed with great care to be calm, and which was calm in the specific heavy way of a place where everyone present is carrying something serious and has collectively agreed not to say so out loud. The chairs were comfortable and the light was soft, and there was a window along one wall that showed a garden courtyard with a fountain that moved water in slow, deliberate circles. I had told no one I was coming. Not Thomas, not my mother, not Valentina, who had given me the information and would have mixed feelings about what I was doing with it. I had come alone because this was between ISA and me, and I did not want anyone else in the room when it happened. I sat and waited and watched the door. She came through it at 1:52. I saw her before she saw me, which gave me a few seconds to absorb the sight of her, and I needed those seconds because she looked different from the last time I had seen her, which was on the dance floor at our wedding reception with the Wynwood lights above her and her dress moving and her laugh filling the room. She looked the same, the dark eyes and the dark hair and the specific way she held herself, upright and purposeful, like someone who has always known where she is going. But there was something underneath it that was new, a careful quality, the way a person moves when they are conserving something. She was with her mother. Elena walked beside her with the specific closeness of a woman who had been told to stay close and had not needed telling. They were talking as they came through the door, and I watched Ise's face in the conversation, the animation in it, the way she was fully present even here, even now, and felt something move through my chest that had no name. Elena saw me first. She stopped walking. Her hand found Ise's arm. Ise followed her mother's gaze and found me across the waiting room. For 3 seconds she did not move. 3 seconds of something passing across her face that was too fast and too complex to fully read. Shock and something beneath shock. Something that looked like relief and then immediately looked like fear, and then the composure coming down over all of it like a curtain. She said something to her mother in a low voice. Elena squeezed her arm and stepped back and found a chair near the window and sat down and looked at the garden and gave us the room. Ise walked toward me. She stopped 3 feet away and looked at me, and I looked at her, and neither of us said anything for a moment that felt like a very long time. "Valentina told you," she said. "Yes," I said. "I asked her not to," she said. "I know," I said. "I asked her anyway, and she loves you, and she was right." Something moved across her face. "Marcus," she said. "No," I said. "Let me go first." She pressed her lips together and waited. "You made a decision about my life," I said. "Without me. You decided what I could handle and what I needed and what love between us was supposed to look like when things were hard, and you made all of those decisions alone, and they were wrong. Not because you were trying to hurt me, because you were trying to protect me from something that was not yours to protect me from alone. You were going to give up everything," she said, and her voice was very controlled. "I was going to marry you," I said, "which I did, which is not giving up everything, it is gaining everything, and you know that. You would have stayed out of obligation," she said. "I would have stayed because you are my wife," I said. "Because 3 years and 8 months ago you asked me a question during my presentation that was more intelligent than anything I had said in it, and I have never recovered from that, and I never want to. Because you are the most alive person I have ever been near, and the idea of you going through something this large in a room I am not in is something I am not willing to accept." Her composure moved, just slightly. Her eyes went bright in a way she was trying to prevent. "I did not want you to watch me be sick," she said. "I did not want to be a person you loved out of duty. I did not want you to look at me and see illness instead of me. I would see you," I said. "I will always see you. That does not change based on your diagnosis." "You do not know that," she said. "I know it the way I know the bay," I said. "The way I know the water. Completely and without needing to prove it." She looked at me. Her eyes were fully bright now, and she was not winning the fight against it. "I was trying to set you free," she said. Her voice cracked on the last word, the first crack in the control, and it broke something open in the room. "I do not want to be free," I said. "I want to be here, with you, in this waiting room and in the apartment and in the bay and in whatever comes next. All of it. That is what I want." She looked at me for a long, full moment. "I have stage 2 ovarian cancer," she said. Directly, clearly, the way she said all true things. "The treatment is aggressive. I am going to be sick, and I am going to be difficult, and I am going to have days where I am not myself, and I am going to need help in ways that neither of us can fully predict right now." "I know," I said. "You do not know," she said. "You know the word. You do not know what it looks like." "Then show me," I said. "Let me be here and show me what it looks like." She pressed her hand flat over her mouth for a moment and looked at the ceiling and blinked and then looked back at me. "I was so scared," she said. "I am so scared." "I know," I said. I know. Come here. She crossed the 3 feet between us, and I held her in the waiting room of the Sylvester Comprehensive Cancer Center with the fountain moving in the garden outside and Elena sitting near the window looking at the water and not looking at us. And Isa pressed her face into my shoulder and held on with both hands, and I held her back with everything I had. She was shaking. I had not felt her shake before. This woman, who was the most alive person I knew, who had opinions about everything and delivered them without apology, who had laughed at our wedding until the room changed, was shaking in my arms in a cancer center waiting room, and I held on and did not try to stop it or fix it or make it smaller than it was. We stayed like that for a long time. When she finally pulled back, her eyes were red and her composure was gone completely, and she looked, without the composure, more fully herself than she had looked since I had seen her last. I am sorry I left, she said. I know, I said. I thought I was doing the right thing, she said. I know that too, I said. Were you angry? She said. Devastatingly, I said. Are you still? She said. No, I said. Ask me again in a week. She made a sound that was between a laugh and something else and pressed her hand flat against my chest, feeling my heartbeat. I do not know how to do this, she said. Any of it. Neither do I said. We will figure it out. What if it does not go well, she said. The real fear finally named. Then we face whatever does not go well, I said. Together. Not with you in a house in South Miami and me in an apartment in Coconut Grove reading your voicemail. She looked up at me. Her dark eyes, always a step ahead of the conversation, were simply present. Just here. Take me home, she said quietly. To our apartment. Yes, I said. She turned and said something to her mother. Elena stood and came and held her daughter for a moment, and then looked at me over Isa's shoulder with an expression of something enormous and complex that resolved into a single nod. I nodded back. We walked out of the cancer center into the Miami afternoon, hot and white and pressing in the specific way of a July day in the city. And I took her hand and she held on, and we walked to my car, and I drove us back through the city toward Coconut Grove with her hand in mine on the center console, and the bay visible occasionally between buildings as we went, blue and moving and constant. She fell asleep in the passenger seat before we reached the Grove, the deep, exhausted sleep of someone who has been carrying too much alone for too long and has finally put it down. I drove and let her sleep and watched the road and thought about what was ahead of us, the treatment and the difficult days and the ways we could not fully predict. And I thought about standing at the altar 8 days ago and saying the words in front of 120 people, the specific words about better and worse and sickness and health, which had felt formal and traditional when I said them and now felt like the most precise and important language I had ever used. I had meant every word. She had run from every word out of love. Now we were going to have to learn what the words meant in practice. I pulled into the parking garage of our building, and she stirred and blinked and looked at the familiar concrete around us. We are home, I said. She looked at me. Yes, she said. We are. And for the first time in 11 days, she smiled. Small and tired and entirely real. I held onto it like it was the most important thing in the world. Because it was. The months that followed were the hardest thing I have ever been part of and the most important. Treatment began in earnest in August. The oncologist, a careful and direct woman named Dr. Amara Osei, who had the specific quality of someone who told you the truth and made it possible to survive hearing it, outlined the protocol. Chemotherapy in cycles, each cycle 3 weeks, rest weeks between them, a surgery date tentatively set for December depending on how the tumor responded to treatment. 6 months minimum, possibly longer. The road was long and the terrain was not fully mapped, and this was simply the nature of the thing. Isa received this information the way she received most information, directly, asking precise questions, taking notes in the small notebook she brought to every appointment, the kind of scientist's attention that turned fear into data as a coping mechanism. I sat beside her at every appointment and held the information alongside her and asked my own questions, the practical ones about timelines and logistics and what we needed to prepare for, because that was my version of the same coping mechanism, building the structure first and letting the feeling find its way in afterward. We had moved back into the Coconut Grove apartment together the night I brought her home from the cancer center, and we spent the first week carefully navigating the specific awkwardness of two people who love each other and have just been through something that has shifted the ground beneath everything. She was apologetic in the way she was apologetic, directly and without excessive self-flagellation, saying the real thing once and clearly and then not retreating into it. I was angry in the way I was angry, which was quietly and for a specific period and then finished. We talked about it once, fully, on a Sunday morning when the bay outside the bedroom window was doing its beautiful early morning thing, flat and silver before the city woke up. She sat across from me at the kitchen table and I sat across from her, and we said the true things that needed to be said. She told me that she had received the diagnosis on a Tuesday, 3 days before the wedding, and had sat in her car in the parking lot of the medical building for 2 hours before driving home. She had not cried. She had sat and thought with the specific methodical clarity that her mind went to in crisis, turning the situation over, examining each face of it. She had thought, I cannot cancel the wedding because the invitations are sent and the chapel is booked and 120 people have flights and hotels. She had thought, I cannot tell him before the wedding because he will cancel it for me, and I do not want him to cancel it for me. She had thought, I cannot tell him at the wedding because it will ruin the wedding and he deserves the wedding. She had thought, I will tell him after, in the morning when we are alone, I will tell him then. And then the morning came and she lay beside me in the dark of the early hours listening to me breathe and thought, if I tell him now he will not leave. He will be there through all of it, not because he chose it freely but because he married me yesterday and he is the kind of man who honors what he chooses. And I will become something he is tethered to. And the love will become something complicated by obligation. And I cannot bear that. So I left, she said. You left, I said. It was wrong, she said. It was wrong, I said. I was trying to love you, she said. I just did it badly. Yes, I said. You did it badly. Are we going to be all right? She said. I looked at her across the kitchen table with the bay behind her going from silver to blue as the morning came on. We are going to be more than all right, I said. It is going to be hard and we are going to have days that are very bad and we are going to disagree about how to handle things and you are going to try to manage me and I am going to stand in your way when you do. And at the end of all of it we are going to be all right. She held my gaze. You are very certain, she said. I am an architect, I said. I build things that hold. I know the difference between a structure with good bones and one without. She pressed her lips together and looked at the table and then back at me. We have good bones, she said. We have excellent bones, I said. The first chemo cycle began the second week of August. I drove her to the infusion center on Lejeune Road and sat beside her for 4 hours while the medication went in, reading from the novel she was currently working through so that she had something to listen to, a thing she had told me she wanted on a bad day when she could not focus her own eyes on words. I read badly, too fast in some places and too slow in others, stumbling over names, but she kept her eyes closed and her face was quiet, and at some point her hand found mine on the arm of the chair and she held it without opening her eyes, and I kept reading. The side effects arrived on schedule and were exactly as unpleasant as advertised. Nausea that came in waves without warning. Exhaustion that was not like normal tiredness but like a weight that pressed from the inside out. The hair loss began in the 3rd week of the first cycle, and that was the first day I saw her cry, really cry. Not the bright eyes in the cancer center but the full grief of losing something specific and visible, sitting in the bathroom at the Coconut Grove apartment with strands of her dark hair in her hands. I sat on the bathroom floor beside her and did not say anything useful because there was nothing useful to say. I did not tell her she would be beautiful without hair because it was not the point. I did not tell her it would grow back because the future was not the present and the present was what needed acknowledging. I just sat beside her on the bathroom floor and let her cry and handed her tissues and was there with all of me, the entirety of what I had. After a while she looked at me with red eyes and said, I look terrible. You look like someone who is going through something hard. I said. Same thing, she said. Not even close, I said. She looked at me for a moment and then she leaned her head on my shoulder and I put my arm around her and we sat on the bathroom floor of our apartment in Coconut Grove for a long time. Not saying much, the Miami morning outside and the bay somewhere beyond the window, and both of us exactly where we were supposed to be. Thomas came twice a week. He was the only friend I allowed into the close circle of what was happening. Not because others did not offer, but because Isa was private about her illness in the specific way of someone who needed to control what they could when so much was beyond control. She did not want to be discussed. She did not want to be prayed over or sent casseroles or visited by people whose faces showed their fear of the situation. She wanted Thomas because Thomas had known her for 3 years and treated her the same before and after the diagnosis, with the cheerful irreverence that was his particular form of love, arriving with food he had actually cooked and opinions about everything, and the willingness to sit in the room and talk about things that had nothing to do with cancer, which was sometimes exactly what was needed. On a Tuesday evening in September, 6 weeks into treatment, Dr. Osei called with the results of the interim imaging. I was in the kitchen when Isa answered the phone in the sitting room. I stayed in the kitchen. I heard her say yes and then hum and then yes again and then a pause and then something I could not hear. She came into the kitchen. Her face was doing something I had not seen before, a careful stillness, the kind that comes when you are holding something and deciding how to hold it. "The tumor is responding," she said. I set down the knife I was holding. "It has reduced," she said. "Significantly." Dr. Osei said the response is better than expected. She is cautiously optimistic about the surgery timeline. I looked at her. "Better than expected," I said. "Better than expected," she said. I crossed the kitchen and held her, and she held on, and we stood in the kitchen of our Coconut Grove apartment with the bay outside and the Miami evening coming in through the windows, and I felt something move through me that was too large for any single word. Something that lived below relief and above hope, in the territory where gratitude lives when it is so immense it loses its name. "We are going to be all right," she said into my shoulder. "Yes," I said. "You said it first," she said. "I know," I said. "I was right." She made a sound against my shoulder that was more laugh than anything else and held on tighter. We stood there for a long time. Outside, the Miami evening was doing what it did, gold and warm and always more beautiful than you remembered to expect. The bay catching the last of the light and throwing it back up at the sky. And I thought about reading things, about paying attention, about knowing the language of something well enough to understand its moods, and thought, This is what I had been paying attention to all along and had not known it. The language of this woman, which I was still learning and would spend my life learning, was the most important thing I had ever tried to read. I was going to keep reading, for as long as we had, which it was beginning to seem was going to be a very long time. December arrived with the surgery, and I have never been so afraid in my life. The surgery was scheduled for the 14th, a Thursday, at Jackson Memorial. Dr. Osei and her surgical team had been planning it for weeks with the specific meticulous attention of people who understood that precision was a form of care. The tumor had responded well enough to chemotherapy that the surgical approach was more targeted than initially feared, which was the best possible version of a still significant operation. Isa spent the night before in the hospital pre-surgical protocol, and I stayed until visiting hours ended at 9 and then drove home and sat in the apartment that was too quiet without her and did something I had not done since I was a young man in Coconut Grove who had not yet learned that some feelings are too large for the container of a controlled person. I sat on the edge of the bed we shared and put my face in my hands and cried. Not gracefully, not quietly, with the full and unmanaged grief of someone who had been holding the shape of the fear for 4 months. Carrying it through every appointment and every infusion cycle and every bathroom floor moment and every cautiously optimistic interim result. Carrying it with the kind of careful, controlled competence that architects and structural engineers develop because the structures have to hold, and so you hold yourself accordingly. And now at 11 o'clock the night before the surgery with her pillow still carrying the faint scent of her shampoo, the holding gave way. I cried for 20 minutes. Then I washed my face and called Thomas, who answered on the second ring and did not say anything particularly useful and was exactly right about it. Just present on the other end of the phone, talking about nothing important for an hour while I lay in the dark and breathed. In the morning, I drove to Jackson Memorial before the sun was fully up. She was awake when I arrived, sitting in the hospital bed in the pre-surgical suite with the small notebook open on her tray, writing. She looked up when I came in and smiled, the real one, and said, "You look terrible." I did not sleep, I said. I know, she said. I did not either. But I did not have the option of looking terrible about it because there were nurses every 2 hours. I sat in the chair beside the bed and she reached out and took my hand with the hand that did not have the 4 line in it. I need to tell you something, she said. All right, I said. Whatever happens today, she said. I need you to know that the last 4 months have been the most real months of my life. Not the best, the most real. And I know that sounds like a strange thing to say about 4 months that have been mostly terrible, but I mean it. You have been here with every single part of it, and I have never been known so completely by another person, and I did not know how much I needed to be known until you refused to let me disappear. I looked at her in the hospital bed with the Miami morning coming through the window behind her. The city starting its day outside. You gave me the greatest gift a person can give, she said. You chose to stay when I gave you every reason to go. There was no reason, I said. There was only you. She looked at me. Her dark eyes, always a step ahead, were simply still. I love you, she said. I should have said it more. I am going to say it more. I love you, I said. Come back to me. I will, she said. That is a promise. They came for her at 7:30 and I stood in the corridor and watched the bed go through the double doors and the doors closed and I was alone in the corridor of Jackson Memorial with the sound of the hospital around me and 6 to 8 hours ahead of me in which I had no information and nothing to do but wait. Thomas arrived at 8. Elena and Valentina arrived at 8:30. My mother arrived at 9. We sat in the surgical waiting room, the 5 of us, in the specific heavy companionship of people waiting together for news about someone they all love. And we talked and did not talk and drank bad coffee from the machine in the corner and watched the clock with the particular attention of people for whom time has become the only currency that matters. At 2:17 in the afternoon, Dr. Osei came through the waiting room door. We all stood. Simultaneously, without planning to, all 5 of us got to our feet the way people do when something important is arriving. Dr. Osei looked at me first. The surgery went well, she said. We achieved clear margins. The tumor has been removed. There was no spread to the lymph nodes that we can identify at this stage, which is consistent with what the imaging suggested. She paused. She did very well. Elena made a sound beside me. Valentina took her mother's hand. Thomas put his hand on my shoulder. I stood very still. She is going to be fine? I said. She is going to need recovery time and follow-up treatment, Dr. Osei said. But the surgical outcome is as good as we could have hoped for. Yes, she is going to be fine. I sat down. Not planned. My legs simply made the decision for me and I was sitting in the waiting room chair with my hands pressed together between my knees and the information moving through me in a wave that I could not control and did not try to. Thomas sat beside me and put his arm around my shoulders and I let him. Elena and Valentina held each other by the window. Outside the Jackson Memorial windows, the Miami afternoon was doing its December thing, cooler than the rest of the year but still warm by any standard that was not Miami. The sky the particular blue of a Florida winter day that makes you understand why people come here and why they stay. I thought about cold sheets on the morning after a wedding. I thought about 11 days of voicemail. I thought about a waiting room in the Sylvester Center and a woman walking through a door and 3 feet of space across a room. I thought about a bathroom floor and a notebook full of questions and interim imaging and cautiously optimistic and better than expected. I thought about saying come back to me and hearing I will. I thought about her sitting in her hospital bed this morning with the notebook open. Writing. I had not asked what she was writing. I would ask her when she was out of recovery. I would ask her everything when she was out of recovery. I had a lifetime of questions for her and a lifetime in which to ask them, and that was the fact I was going to hold on to from this moment forward. They let me see her at 4:30. She was in the recovery room, groggy and pale and more present than I expected. Her eyes open and tracking when I came in. She looked at me and I looked at her and I sat in the chair beside the bed and took her hand. Clear margins, I said. I know, she said. They told me. Her voice was rough from the anesthesia. You did it, I said. We did it, she said. I pressed my hand over hers and looked at her face. Still pale, still tired, still hers. the dark eyes at less than full wattage but fully present. Still the most alive person I had ever been near. "What were you writing this morning?" I said. "In the notebook." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "A letter." "To who?" I said. "To you," she said. "In case." I held very still. "I did not want to leave without." She paused. "I did not want to leave without you knowing. Everything. All of it. The real version." "You did not leave," I said. "No," she said. "I did not." "Good," I said. She looked at me with those tired present eyes. "You can read it anyway," she said. "When we get home. It is not a bad letter. I write good letters." "You are a scientist," I said. "I thought you wrote papers." "I write good papers and good letters," she said. "I contain multitudes." I laughed, and it surprised me, arriving from somewhere that had been under too much pressure for too long and finally finding room. She smiled at the sound of it, small and tired and entirely real. "Take me home," she said. "Soon. Take me home." "Yes," I said. "I will take you home." And outside the recovery room the Miami December afternoon went on, bright and particular and beautiful in the way of things that do not know they are being watched. And I sat beside my wife and held her hand and felt the shape of the future opening ahead of us like the bay on a clear morning, wide and blue and full of everything we had not yet seen. January was recovery, and it was slow and it was not linear, and it was the most tender month I have ever lived. She came home from Jackson Memorial on the 19th of December, 5 days after the surgery, with a folder of discharge instructions and a follow-up schedule, and a look on her face when we pulled into the Coconut Grove parking garage that was the specific look of someone who has been away from home in the particular way that illness takes you away, and is back in the particular way that being truly well again is still ahead but the direction is right. The apartment had been prepared. Thomas and my mother had come while we were at the hospital and put fresh sheets on the bed and filled the refrigerator with things that were easy and put flowers on the kitchen counter, yellow ones, because Thomas knew they were her favorite and would have asked her if he could. There was a card from Valentina on the table. The shells were still on the windowsill above the sink, exactly where she had left them. She walked to the window and looked at the shells for a long moment. "They waited," she said. "They waited," I said. She turned and looked at the apartment, all of it, slowly and deliberately, the way you look at something you have not been sure you would see again and now are seeing. Then she looked at me. "Okay," she said. "I am home." The recovery had good days and bad days in patterns that did not always follow logic. There were mornings she woke up with energy and made coffee and sat at the kitchen table with her research papers and looked like herself completely. There were afternoons she fell asleep on the sofa at 2 o'clock and did not wake until evening and woke confused and frustrated by the confusion. There were nights when the discomfort was significant and she lay awake and I lay beside her and we talked in the dark the way you talk at 3 in the morning when sleep has gone and there is nothing to do but be honest. She told me things in those nighttime conversations that she had never told me in the full waking day. The way the dark makes honesty easier, the way exhaustion strips the composure away and leaves the real thing. She told me about being 12 years old and watching her grandmother die of cancer in a bed at the house in Little Havana and deciding at 12 that the body was something you had to understand or it would surprise you. She told me that was why she became a marine biologist, because the ocean was the oldest living system in the world and understanding how living systems worked felt like the most important thing a person could spend a life doing. She told me that when she got the diagnosis she had thought about her grandmother's face, the face at the end, and had been more afraid of that than anything, more afraid of becoming that face while I watched than of the disease itself. "I know," I said. "I know you know," she said. "I am telling you anyway because I never told you before." "I know that too," I said. She was quiet for a moment. "I thought leaving you was the brave thing," she said. "The loving thing. I thought it was the kind of sacrifice that love required. It was the kind of sacrifice that fear required," I said. She was still for a moment. "Yes," she said. "You are right." "I know," I said. "Do not be smug about it," she said. "I am not being smug," I said. "I am being accurate." "Same thing with you," she said. But she was smiling and I could hear it in her voice. "We lay in the dark. I am sorry I made you go through that alone." she said quietly. The 11 days. You were going through something, I said. So were you, she said. Yes, I said. We were both alone, she said. For 11 days. When we could have been together. Yes, I said. We could have been. We are not going to do that again, she said. Either of us. No, I said. We are not. She shifted and found my hand in the dark. Promise me something. Yes, I said. Promise me that when things are hard, she said. You will tell me, before you have solved it, before you know the answer. Just tell me the hard thing and let me be part of it. I promise, I said. Same, she said. We held that for a moment. Marcus, she said. Yes, I said. I read the letter, she said. The one she had written the morning of the surgery. You read it, I said. I wanted to know what I said, she said. Before you read it. And, I said. It is a good letter, she said. You should read it. In the morning, I said. In the morning, she agreed. She fell asleep before I did, her hand still in mine, and I lay in the dark and listened to her breathe, the specific rhythm of it, and thought about all the mornings I had gone to the marina in Coconut Grove and stood at the end of the pier and watched the bay and read the water. The way you could tell from the surface what was happening below. The way color and movement and light on water told you things about depth and current that you could not see directly. The way the bay was always the same water and always different depending on what the day brought to it. She was the most complex and beautiful thing I had ever tried to read. I was going to keep reading. That was my only plan. Just that, just this, just her, for as long as the world allowed it. I fell asleep. In March, she went back to work. Not full-time, not at first, 3 days a week to start. The Rosenstiel School making accommodations with the specific generosity of an institution that understood the research was valuable and the researcher was more so. She went back on a Tuesday and texted me from her office at 10 in the morning. Just, I am here. My desk smells exactly the same. I texted back, how does your desk smell? She replied, like salt water and old paper and 4 months of nobody touching anything. Then, it is perfect. I replied, good. Dr. Osei's February follow-up had been the best appointment we had been to together, which was saying something because we had been to many. The post-surgical imaging was clean. The follow-up treatment protocol was lighter than the initial chemotherapy, manageable alongside work. The word she used, carefully and with the specific precision of a doctor who understood the weight of language, was remission. ISA had received that word the way she received most true things, directly and without performing a reaction. She had written it in her notebook. She had asked Dr. Osei 3 precise questions about what remission meant in terms of monitoring and timelines and probability. Then she had looked at me and I had looked at her and we had both understood that the word was the thing we had been working toward for 6 months and that it was real and that the realness of it was going to take time to fully arrive. In the car afterward, she looked at the notebook on her lap. Remission, she said. Yes, I said. That is a word I did not know if I was going to get to use, she said. I know, I said. I kept the letter I wrote, she said. The one from the morning of the surgery. I read it, I said. I had read it 3 days after she came home, sitting alone at the kitchen table while she was resting, and it had taken me a long time to get through it because she wrote the way she talked, precisely and without apology, and what she had written was everything she would have wanted me to know if she had not come back, and reading it knowing she had come back was an experience I did not have words for. Did it say what I thought it said? She asked. More, I said. She looked at the window. The Miami February afternoon was outside, pale and warm. I want to do something, she said. What? I said. I want to go back to the chapel, she said. On Brickell, where we got married. I looked at her. Not a ceremony, she said. Not a thing. I just want to go back and stand there and be 2 people who are fine. Yes, I said. We drove to the chapel on Brickell Avenue on a Saturday in March when the Miami morning was doing one of its perfect things. Clear and bright with a wind off the bay that was warm but moving. The kind of morning that makes you understand that you live in a beautiful place and have been forgetting to notice. The chapel was empty on a Saturday morning. The door was open for a wedding later in the day, and a woman setting up flowers inside let us in without ceremony when we asked, giving us 20 minutes and the good sense not to hover. We walked in and stood at the back for a moment. The chapel was small and simple, and light came through the high windows on the east side in long warm strips. The same light that had been there 9 months ago when 120 people had sat in these rows and watched us walk toward each other. "I remember everything," she said. "So do I," I said. "I remember thinking," she said. "When you were at the altar and I was walking toward you, I remember thinking, I cannot do this. Not because I did not want to, because I knew what I knew, and I was walking toward you anyway, and I thought, I cannot keep this from him, and I cannot tell him right now, and I do not know what I am doing." "But you kept walking," I said. "I kept walking," she said, "because you were there and the alternative was not there." We walked down the aisle slowly, side by side, not as a performance but just as two people moving through a familiar space. We stopped at the front, where we had stood 9 months ago. She turned and looked at me. "I want to say the things I meant," she said, "without the things I was hiding underneath them." I looked at her. Her dark hair was growing back, shorter than it had been, and she had stopped trying to disguise its length and was simply wearing it as it was, and it suited her with the specific rightness of things that are honest. "I married you because you are the best person I know," she said, "because you asked questions during my presentation that made me want to answer them for the rest of my life. Because you build things that hold, and I needed someone who understood how to do that. Because you sat on my bathroom floor and did not try to fix it. Because you drove to a cancer center and crossed a waiting room and stood 3 feet away and would not let me disappear." She looked at me steadily. "And because you are the kind of person who reads the bay. The whole bay. Not just the surface." I held her gaze. "I married you because you asked me a question that was smarter than anything I said," I said. "Because you are the most alive person I have ever been near, and I have spent every day since trying to be worthy of being near it. Because you made a terrible decision for the most loving reasons, and I could not be angry at the love even when I was furious at the decision. Because you wrote me a letter you thought I would only read if you did not come back, and it was the most honest thing I have ever read, and I want to spend the rest of my life reading the honest things you write." She pressed her hand flat against my chest. "We are going to be all right," she said. "More than all right," I said. "More than all right," she agreed. The chapel light moved across the floor between us as the morning shifted, warm and clean and without drama. The simple light of a March morning in Miami coming through old windows onto two people standing where they had stood before with everything different and everything the same. I took her face in both hands and kissed her in the empty chapel with the flowers for someone else's wedding surrounding us and the bay somewhere beyond the city moving in its constant way, and she held onto my arms and kissed me back, and the chapel was quiet around us. When we pulled apart, she looked at me with those dark eyes that were always a step ahead. "Take me to the marina," she said. "I want to see the bay." "Yes," I said. We drove to Coconut Grove and walked to the marina and out to the end of the pier where I had stood on the night after Valentina told me, and we stood at the end of it together with the bay in front of us and the city behind us and the Miami March morning turning the water blue and silver in the specific way it turned the water at this hour on days like this, the way I had been watching it for 34 years and had never stopped finding it worth watching. She put her arm through mine and leaned into my shoulder. "I have a research proposal I want to talk to you about," she said. "For a long-term study of coral restoration in Biscayne Bay. I have been thinking about it for months." "Tell me," I said. She talked. I listened. The bay moved below us, steady and wide and always more than its surface, and the Miami morning went on in its beautiful and different way, and the two of us stood at the end of the pier and were simply, completely, precisely where we were supposed to be. Behind us the city was full of the ordinary business of a Saturday, people and noise and the million small decisions that add up to a life, and ahead of us the bay was doing what it had always done. Reading as legible to those who knew its language and as mysterious to those who did not, and I knew its language now better than I had ever known it. I knew hers better too. I was going to keep learning both. For the rest of my life. starting right here at the end of a pier in Coconut Grove on a Saturday in March, with the woman I married standing beside me, alive and here in mine, both of us looking at the same water and seeing, for the first time in a long time, nothing but the clear and open distance ahead.